I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. It's such an honour to be here, and I'd just like to say that when I'm not playing Xbox with my mate Thor, I really like to listen to my favourite podcast, Pop Culture Pasta. Hey, Doug! Doug! Oh, that's right, Doug's dead.
Pop Culture Pastor.
All right, Cody. I'm gonna list off some numbers, some percentages for you. You ready for this?
I was born ready for this.
I'm gonna list off some percentages, and I need you to try and guess what they are.
The Mendoza line.
No, these are below the Mendoza line.
Oh, okay.
No, actually, technically not, but that's a baseball term.
It is.
Baseball, famously low percentage to do well.
Yes.
Maybe I was meant to be a baseball player. I don't know. Here we go. Here are the numbers. 52%, 50%, 38%, 38%, 50%, 13%. Hint, these are not my math scores.
Are these Rotten Tomato scores?
These are Rotten Tomato scores.
Sweet. Now, I don't know if this is going to be DCEU or Marvel, but it's one of them.
At this point, there's not much distinction in what we're about to talk about. Before I tell you what they are, we should say, this is Pop Culture Pastor. Welcome. I'm Dave. Cody's here.
And you're listening to a podcast.
Yeah, this is a podcast. And we're going to get into some critical things here. But I need you to know that we're pastors. And what that means is, hey, we love you. We're rooting for you. We want everyone to win.
Even James Cameron.
I'm shuddering as I say this, even James Cameron, who annoys me on a level I can't fully put into words. But I want him to win. If James Cameron wanted to be on the pod, that'd be great. I'd love to have a conversation with James Cameron. He's clearly a brilliant dude. I don't want to take anything away from him. But
I would probably stutter and stumble so much. It would ruin the pod.
He's clearly a brilliant dude. I just wish I didn't have to hear it from him all the time. How brilliant he is.
Bazang.
Zingo. Okay, back to our numbers. 52, 50, 38, 38, 50, and 13 are the Rotten Tomato scores of the 6 episodes of Secret Invasion. Marvel Studios' Secret Invasion, starring Samuel L. Jackson. Now,
Sam Jackson.
We made a pretty specific decision in our watch-alongs because some people, many of our listeners, wanted us to do Secret Invasion as a watch-along. And I am someone, Cody's not much of a spoiler guy.
No.
He tries not to follow those things, but I like the conjecture because I follow some spoiler YouTube channels and stuff, but really they're just talking about conjecture and rumors and things they've heard. Really, more than half the time they don't pan out, but I just like talking about that kind of stuff. So I listen to these channels and thinking about that kind of stuff. And I had heard some things that were some rumblings from inside sources that said Secret Invasion was not great. This had been the couple weeks before the show was about to come out. And so we had concerns about doing it as a watch along because of exactly what happened. What if the show comes out and it's super mid? Which 50% Rotten Tomato scores, that's the exact definition of being mid.
I will tell you, I watched the first episode. I'm going to binge the show sometime.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, for being a spy thriller, you wasted like a good chunk of that episode. And then like the following weeks, people were spoiling the ever-loving nerd out of it. But they all kept saying, this isn't good.
It's not like it's so. If I try to explain, because I think we talked about very briefly on a news segment like we're doing now. I think we briefly talked about that. We had watched the first episode, and I think I said something along the lines of like, the story was interesting enough for the first episode, but it was, I think I even said back then, it was just okay, but I understand they have to set things up. Well, honestly, the whole show feels like setup for something that never quite happens. And I'm not going to get into spoilers or anything in case, you want to watch it, because what I'm aiming for here is to talk about a deeper, bigger question. But frankly, Secret Invasion is crazy mid. It's just mid. It's not terrible.
It's not bussin'.
But it's not bussin'. Not even close.
It doesn't slap.
I am so glad we didn't do a watch along on it, because I literally would have struggled to try and really flesh out these episodes and talk about them like they had any deeper meaning, which they do not. In fact, it's just so mid that I don't even like to think about it, because when I think about the comic book story, Secret Invasion, the story that this story has really nothing in common with except for Skrulls, I just think, what a waste.
The director was told not to read the comics, and I didn't read the comics just because he said not to.
The director has gotten on my nerves with his interviews after the fact. So let me tell you about something this director said. He said that, I don't have it pulled up. Okay, I'll just tell you. He did an interview where he said he was afraid he was going to get death threats because of the reveal. And frankly, I don't mind spoiling this because you knew it anyways. It's been talked about. And if you've watched the first couple episodes, this was so telegraphed. This was their big twist. And it was so telegraphed that you knew it was coming. Rhodey is a Skrull and has been a Skrull.
What?
For apparently some time. So that's the big twist. And I don't feel bad because it's not really even a spoiler. If you're online, you probably knew it. If you've watched the first episode, you knew it, because they telegraph the play so bad. And so that it's not even a twist. It's just, common. You thought, oh, of course he is.
Oh, Ali Salam.
Yeah, Ali Salam. And he does this interview where he's afraid he's going to get death threats because it changes the end of Endgame.
Did it?
The moment with Rhodey and the thing. But here I am. But listen, he's doing this interview. He did another interview where he said, well, because Rhodey is wearing a hospital gown when we see him at the end of Secret Invasion, that to him meant it was at the end of Civil War that the Skrulls made the switch. Now, I'm going to tell you why this is Marvel has said all along, they planned this. They had conversations with Don Cheadle about this, that it was all planned. Now, here's the problem. At the end of Endgame, when Rhodey is talking to a dying Tony Stark, he's bleeding. Red blood.
Uh-oh.
That's actually Rhodey. So, no, you did not switch him out. Or if you did, you decided to do it after the fact, and you're just doing a lousy job of covering your bases. Which gets me to this point. This whole phase 4 and the beginning of phase 5 has been a cluster of monumental proportions. I don't know if we can actually talk about, look, the DCEU wasn't great, but at least they weren't coming from an Endgame type precipice.
No, they never reached it.
Marvel had it all. I mean, literally had it all. And then, I think now if we're doing it, if you take out No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, oh my goodness.
Guardians 3.
Guardians really stands alone, though, because it doesn't plug into the MCU at large at all. It's its own story, which is fine. I actually like stories like that. They don't all have to connect. Moon Knight was great. Mm-hmm. Didn't connect to the MCU at large at all. That's fine. I'm actually okay with Moon Knight. I know a lot of people aren't, but, that's because he doesn't resonate. His comics never sell. He's a cool character that doesn't really resonate, whatever. My problem is that Thor, Ant-Man, characters that were established, that were making money, that were good movies, you made movies of them and they stunk. They straight up stunk. Furthermore, the Disney Plus experiment is, Disney Plus is a disaster. In fact, most streaming is.
So it's going to be interesting as we go forward, just because Disney Plus and Hulu will eventually be just one.
Yeah. Well, listen, the strike and everything, and Bob Iger, Bob Iger is not likable. He's
No.
not a likable dude. He said some awful things. But here's what nobody's really talking about. That this whole strike is the actors and writers saying, hey, we're not being compensated for streaming. The problem is streaming is losing money. If you're not Netflix, they're all losing money, Cody.
And even Netflix is supposedly losing money on some of their bigger shows.
Yeah. And Disney Plus, I mean, Disney, okay, solid question. This is where I wanted to get to with this. Can Disney, we were just talking about, this is amazing that we're even talking about this. We were just talking about this with Warner Brothers because Warner Brothers became dangerously close until Barbie came dangerously close to losing the studio. I mean, by going bye-bye.
I don't know.
No, listen. Somebody would have bought the name for sure. But Warner Brothers being its own company almost could have gotten lost.
I don't think so.
I think so.
They have so many other properties and business adventures.
And they were selling them off.
They're good.
They're good.
They were good.
I don't know. You tell me they go another 2 years like they were going, and you saying that would still be there?
I could see it for 5.
Maybe if Obama bailed them out.
Quite possibly.
Like, I don't see it. Okay, but let's go to Disney. Disney currently, this is Disney's current state. In their last 10 movies, they've lost over $1 billion. Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny will be one of the largest, if not the largest, box office bombs in terms of money ever.
Since The Flash.
They have absolutely divided and decimated the Star Wars fandom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just no other way to put it. They seem to be doing the same thing with Marvel now.
Mm-hmm.
They jump-started Willow, an old property, and it was so bad they just are pretending like it never happened. Took it off the streaming network.
Well, without Val Kilmer, you should have done that to begin with.
Shocking Warwick Davis slander.
Sorry, Warwick.
And also to couple all of that, to group all that together with their theme parks are currently having maybe the worst summers they've ever had. Like there's reports of it just being empty in the summer, that's not like Disney World and Disneyland.
That means we can go to Disney World.
Has Disney ruined their brand?
No.
You don't think so?
I think a huge chunk of this is that, the economic downfall that happened during the pandemic.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You're still getting some of that, and you're like getting caught up on some of that in areas that we were willing to spend money before. Now we're like, I don't need to go to the movies every weekend. I only need to go maybe once every 3 months.
That's fair, but also we just had the biggest movie weekend in the last 10 years.
But the previous month had a whole bunch of big blockbusters that did nothing.
This because they were all mid.
Well, no one knows it because they didn't go see it. Where people were like, oh, this looks original. This looks entertaining. I will go watch Barbenheimer.
Look, history will remember that what Warner Brothers did to Michael Keaton's Batman is atrocious. Atrocious, Cody. What a slap in the face.
I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to be a little bit. Have you watched the Michael Keaton Batman movies?
Listen, I'm not the biggest fan of the Michael Keaton Batman movies, but we acknowledge that there are a lot of people that are.
Oh yeah, I'm a fan of them.
And that's what they wanted to do. They used him in the imaging and in the commercials to get everyone excited. Like, oh, look, Michael Keaton's Batman's back. Oh, maybe he sticks around as the universe's Batman. Although that went away when James Gunn kind of started making it clear. But they brought him in the movie just to show him that he was broke and depressed, and then they killed him several times.
Sounds like a Batman movie. So,
the DC apologist.
But no, I didn't want Tim Burton's Batman up on the screen.
No, I didn't either. I don't either.
I like Tim Burton. I like Michael Keaton. It was good for the time. We've had better Batman and Batman movies.
Let's go back to Disney. I didn't mean to get off on DC because we'll come back to DC in a minute. But,
we're back.
Marvel, look, Star Wars, if the Ahsoka show is not good,
it's not going to be great.
It's not a foregone conclusion that it would be because, like, we all thought Mandalorian season 3 was going to be just as good as Mandalorian season 2. And Cody, you're about the only person I know that liked it better. Most people Most people are pretty much agreed that Mandalorian season 2 was superior to this season.
Yeah.
Look, I understand why you would like it more because it delved into some themes that we're fans of, which I will admit I was a fan of those themes too. But I'm trying to just group it in together in general. For the most part, people did not enjoy this season of Mandalorian the way they had previously.
Jabronis.
Andor is a very specific small chunk of the Star Wars group that liked it. And then everyone else seems to hate it.
So I don't think you have to do fan service to the whole fandom.
No. And look, I haven't watched Andor, but everything I've heard about Andor, I'm okay with it because I'm like, you should try and do different things.
And I do think that if you get your target amount of audience, whatever it's going to be, because Andor, I think, would be more of an indie passion project for Star Wars versus like The Last Jedi or something. So I think that if you have a small group of your population that's like, this was really phenomenal, it could get a cult following. I mean, literally, there's so many movies, especially in the 90s and early aughts, that, like, in their theatrical run, no one and their mom watched them. And then they get released on VHS and DVD and eventually streaming. And then everyone's like, I could quote The Big Lebowski forward and backward.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I think we all knew there were circumstances that those were movies that didn't get watched in their opening run.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was stuff that didn't get watched. That's different than people watching it and saying, well, that was pretty mid. Like, look, let's go back to Secret Invasion. They touted it as the Marvel Andor, which...
Well, they got about the same viewing audience.
That's a strange marketing choice, Disney. But that's what they touted it as. And, like, look, I know people that really loved Andor, and after watching Secret Invasion, and I haven't watched Andor, I'm like, well, you just insulted Andor, because that show, Secret Invasion, that show was so mid. It was just so mid. You turn Nick Fury into this inept, like, he's completely inept, bro. He's supposed to be broken, I guess, from the blip still, like mentally broken. But even when he's back and he's trying to, stop the Skrulls, he's so inept. The whole story rests on him doing some sort of harvesting of DNA from the Avengers. Like, that wouldn't fall into some hands you didn't want it in. Like, and then it ends up in their hands. Like, because of course it does.
Sounds about right.
You've made Nick Fury into a joke. It's just so bad. It's such bad storytelling, and it's not even engaging storytelling. And all of a sudden, Marvel's in a situation where, like, look, I will admit, all Marvel needs is one good project that connects with their overall story to get everyone back. I believe that they're in the better situation than Star Wars. However, I think they've done some serious brand damage.
So, honestly, Marvel has a Marvel problem. The law of unintended consequences. Oh, you make this, every movie has to be connected and important to the overall story building. Well, when you have movies and TV shows like WandaVision, you really didn't need to watch it to then go into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. But that's how it's touted, that, you have to watch it. And yes, it does help, but it didn't really matter. And so if you have projects that people can sleep on, then you lose that, we got to keep building. And also, if you have like this huge event in the future that means the movies that are building up are really not going to be that great because it's all pushing forward instead of what's happening right here, right now. And so Marvel has dug their own grave on this one.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that, Cody. These are based on comic books, okay?
Yes.
I read comic books. So I guess what you're telling me is, because I don't think that should be all that hard. You can tell a story and then do what they were doing with it. In the first wave, sometimes there was a MacGuffin, like Guardians of the Galaxy had the Soul Stone in it, or the Power Stone. It was the Power Stone. And it was a part of the narrative. But a lot of those movies, it didn't really tie into the overall story, but the end credit scene did. And that's what comic books have done great for so long, is they told individual stories, but often there would be something in the last page that would lead you into the ongoing story more. And like, this is not a difficult thing to do. And I think you're right in a sense, in that what Marvel has really done that has been terrible is like, so like, for instance, did Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character need to be in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever?
Nope.
No. Did we need a Nick Fury-led Secret Invasion if we're going to see him in the Marvels as a completely, really different kind of character? I mean, it was kind of sort of abrupt that he's broken and all of a sudden
He's fixed.
He's fixed, although you could make an argument that he does not save the day at the end of this. There's really no resolution at the end of this story.
Yep.
That's all rosy. It's just so weird what they've done to try and connect him. They've done a poor job of connecting him. Which almost makes me wish, why don't even try if this is how bad it's going to be.
Let's do the Blade series again.
It's just really, really bad right now. And listen, Disney Plus stuff in particular, if Loki season, so they dropped the trailer for Loki season 2, like a few days after the finale of Secret Invasion, because they couldn't wait, because Secret Invasion was just getting bombed on. And so that was clearly a PR move. They dropped the Loki trailer and like, it looks great. It looks really awesome. And it better be, because I don't know what's going to happen if Loki season 2 is mid. I just don't know. I don't know, man. Because the Marvels, does anyone think the Marvels is going to surprise people and blow people away? Does anyone think that? Because I don't.
I think there's a few out there.
I mean,
they would be statistical outliers, but yes.
I don't know, man. I don't know. The trailer looks good, and I'm hoping. But we already know that Hollywood can cut a trailer. They can make a trailer. They can make a movie look real good.
Too many subpar Star Wars movies based off a trailer alone.
I am nervous. And then they're going to drop Echo in December, which
I actually was intrigued by that story, so
I want to watch it just to see how bad it is, because clearly it's bad if they're just going to drop it en masse. But also, maybe you just don't drop it. Can you afford to drop another mid Disney Plus show?
Well, when we watch the next Aquaman,
oh man,
we will see if you can afford to do this.
Talk about something that should be Batgirled. That should be Batgirled. I mean, you did it, DC. You already did it once. Why are you even coming out with an Aquaman movie? You've completely just so damaged Blue Beetle's chances. Like, Blue Beetle was a movie that I think people should have been excited to see something different. But because James Gunn, let's switch over to DC. Let's talk about DC for a minute. Because James Gunn can't stop talking.
Allegedly.
He can't stop himself from talking. There's so much mixed messaging when it comes to what DC's doing as far as the new, whatever their new universe is going to be. Because like just today, as we're recording this, Gal Gadot came out in an interview and said that James Gunn and Peter Safran told her that Wonder Woman 3 is still very much a possibility.
Well, so he did say that, like, right after he took over, that, oh, it's still on the table. It's Patty, though, walked away, and then Gal's like, if Patty's not here, I'm not here. And now Gal's like, Well, I probably need a payday after this writer's strike.
Okay,
and actors strike.
but let's not bury the lead here. Let's not just protect James Gunn to protect James Gunn.
Oh, I'm not, but I'm saying he said this from the very beginning, though. This isn't news. It's just news gals said it.
Yeah, okay. So here's my problem. Explain to me why Gal Gadot is worth keeping, but Henry Cavill is not. Explain to me how that makes narrative sense. Explain to me how you've got a new Batman in the works, a new Batman movie, but Matt Reeves is going to keep making his Batman movies in a different, separate universe. Like, what are they doing, Cody?
Okay, the Batman thing makes so much sense.
No, it does not.
It really does.
No.
You don't need a cinematic universe. We just talked about with Marvel that you don't need it. Don't do it with every movie.
Well, then why did they hire James Gunn? That's what they wanted.
Yes, but not everything has to be part of the universe. If you want to make a good standalone movie, make a good standalone movie. Matt Reeves is doing it. You keep cashing in those checks. Keep cashing those in. Now, the reason that you keep Gal Gadot and you say, "C'est la vie," Henry Cavill, pay. I mean, Henry Cavill's a bigger star, even though, like, you could list, Gal's been marketed as superhero of the world. Henry's done The Witcher. Henry's done this. He's done that. And, you have a guy that looks almost exactly like Henry Cavill that's going to be a fraction of what it costs to get Henry Cavill. The reason these streaming networks and the movie studios are suffering is because they're overspending. Now, whether
not according to the actors.
Well, maybe it's not on actors, and it's not on writers, but they're spending somewhere, and it is like bananas. I looked at Christopher Nolan's, like, how much he spent to make all his blockbuster movies, and it was ridiculously cheap compared to the movies that just came out that all bombed. I'm like, how can Christopher Nolan make cinematic masterpieces, not use any CGI, recreate an atomic bomb blast for a third of what it took, maybe even a quarter of what it took to make The Flash? How? So
I don't know, but the Flash CGI was terrible.
So if we are spending recklessly, because evidently money was growing on trees for the past 5 years for the studios. The roosters have come home. It is time to cut back. And the easiest way is to go unknown.
I still have a slightly different take with Marvel and DC. Marvel has shown that a connected universe can work. They did it. They already did it. It's possible. Where they've gone wrong is the way they tell the stories. So I think, a lot of people, there's a criticism of Marvel out there that I just completely disagree with. They say there's a lot of critics that say the reason Marvel is struggling now is because of the formula, that people don't want the formula. That's junk. No. You're completely wrong. That sounds like something a movie critic would say, but a movie critic that doesn't understand comic books, that doesn't understand hero stories, the hero's journey. No, actually, we like the formula. The formula is nice. You just got to tell that story better, and we'll be interested. But it's not, and I think Marvel has listened to that. And the problem is they're trying all these different things, and it's not what people want. They don't want broken Nick Fury. We don't want, like, there's this thing we're doing with the hero now. Like, we don't want old broken Indiana Jones. We want the hero. We like the hero.
So my counterpoint is,
why does there always have to be a counterpoint?
There always is. So there was an internet bubble. There was a housing bubble. We might have been in a superhero comic book bubble where, like, there's a comic book project coming out. That's trendy. I'll go watch it. And now you have a group of people that are like, on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Whatever is trending.
In all honesty, I think in retrospect, after Endgame, Avengers as a comic book has never been the most popular property in Marvel.
No.
It's never been. I think it would have behooved them to go a completely different direction after Endgame. It could have still been set in that world. You still could have been dealing with the fallout of the blip and everybody coming back, but you should have went the direction of X-Men or Fantastic Four, you know, something different, and base the next group of movies around that anchor. Mm-hmm. I think that would have been the best, because like the problem with the Avengers shtick is you're deciding you've got actors that don't want to do it anymore, and then you've got ones you don't want to pay anymore.
Look at you, RDJ,
so
for both.
And that's the problem. The problem is like when I think of the Avengers, I'm not thinking of the young Avengers. I don't care about Wanda's kids. I don't care about Ironheart. I don't care about these mid-side characters that shouldn't have their own shows. Like Echo. Like if Echo shows up in a Daredevil show, great. If She-Hulk shows up in a Hulk show, fantastic. But these are not characters you base whole entire shows around, because they're not that popular in comic books. They're just not. And why would you ignore that? Why? Because they got cocky, Cody.
They did.
That's been the problem. And maybe we do need a bubble. Maybe the bubble's bursting.
I will say, I do think you can do world building and you can have connectivity. But with Batman and DC, because there's Elseworlds projects already, like, that's a common thing in DC. Yeah, Batman's one, you just keep cranking out that cash cow.
Yeah, I'm not saying it can't be done and it won't make money. My concern is like...
I won't get confused.
What James Gunn and Safran were trying to project was that they were coming in to start off a whole new universe. And then ever since then, mixed messaging, right?
Yeah.
That's my problem. I'm not saying it can't work. It totally can work.
I think part of it's also fan service, that they're trying to be like, oh, we're not kicking Gal out.
Yeah. Quit. But that's my point. James Gunn, Kevin Feige, anyone in control of these properties, quit doing fan service and just make good stories. Period. All right. We'll be back to talk about our main subject here in Pop Culture Pastor.
You are listening to Pop Culture Pastor.
All right. We're back, and this is Pop Culture Pastor, Dave and Cody, and we're here to talk about our main subject of this pod after we got done frothing at the mouth talking about Marvel and a little bit about DC. Are you recuperated?
As much as one can be.
I'm just going to go on the assumption that Loki 2 is going to knock it out of the park. The Marvels is going to be a surprise hit, and everything's going to and James Gunn's new Superman movie is going to be all the bombs. And I mean that in the good sense.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be bussin'.
We are back, baby.
And we're all going to be like, oh, great, good. We still got geeky comic book movies.
Those were a dark 18 months we went through.
It was all post-pandemic stuff. Let's talk about something right now that really, I think, may have been around for a long time, but maybe didn't rear its head fully until the pandemic hit. And what I'm talking about is something in our culture that now just permeates everything. I think it's if you're in a political conversation, or even if you're arguing about movies or something, like, you know, like Cody and I are pastors, so we can disagree about something and go on loving each other and being okay. But maybe that's not your experience out there in the world. Maybe, you know, you're at the Thanksgiving table with your family and they don't like Matt Reeves' Batman and you do, and things get heated. I don't know.
Bows start flying.
Like, I'm never hanging out with you again. Love you, Mom. So maybe that's your experience. I'm talking about the anger that kind of permeates our society, our culture right now. And I've been thinking a lot about our anger recently, and why wouldn't I? I'm a pastor. These are the sort of things that fascinate me. that culturally we seem to be more angry now than at any time in my lifetime, and that it permeates everything. Now, I'm also coming from a place as a pastor where biblically I believe that anger is not a sin. The Bible says that.
Spoiler alert.
Which means it's meant for your good. And it is. I think anger is what we feel when we see something that is injustice, right? Mm-hmm. It points us to what is right. When we get angry, it's because we've seen something that's not right. Now I am upset. And that is the purpose of that emotion, is that it helps us point us to what's right and true. Mm-hmm. Okay? So in this conversation, I want to make sure that I frame anger right. I don't want to talk about anger like it's a bad thing.
It's a secondary emotion.
Initially. So's love. That's what Tina Turner told me.
What?
Or is it a secondary emotion? What's love got to do with it? What I want to talk about is music.
Familiar with music.
Because I've noticed something about music. But before we get into what I've noticed about music, let's talk about angry music. Because angry music is definitely a genre that people are fans of. I would classify a lot of rap post late 80s as angry music, especially gangsta rap, what we classified as gangsta rap. Angry music has long been a staple in the breakup department. Taylor Swift's genre, right? Taylor Swift makes lots of breakup songs.
But are her songs angry?
I don't know. I don't listen to Taylor Swift. I'm just going by off of what I heard. Are they not? They seem to have some anger to them.
Like, there might be 2 songs out of her whole discography.
If the point of the song is revenge or to one-up someone you had an ex with, isn't that by definition let you in on the fact that she's angry?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Sometimes you're just sad. Sometimes you're like, I'm over it. Sorry.
Okay. But we do acknowledge that up until maybe the 80s, the late 70s, early 80s, by and large, angry songs were breakup songs. Think of Jolene, right? Dolly Parton.
Oh, Dolly. I mean, by and large, but you had groups that had anger and darkness and edge.
I know there's outliers to this.
Sabbath.
But in the early 80s, we get
The
punk.
Doors.
Punk is a genre defined by anger.
Looking at You, The Clash.
Yeah. You've got
Sex Pistols.
You've got punk, then you've got rap. And gangsta rap in particular is something we're going to talk about a little bit about in this show, because gangsta rap seems to be just based in anger. That's the home base. That's where we're coming from, which there are very good reasons for that. And we'll get to that. I promise. Now we're going to go over some studies that will tell you that music since the 50s has been trending in this direction. And now music is more sad and more angry than it's ever been.
Although I would go maybe even earlier than the 50s.
Okay, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, if it's a trend, and is it a case of the frog in the slowly rising temperature water, where the frog won't jump out even when it starts boiling? And do we find ourselves, can we make a connection with how angry we are now? And granted, there's tons of other contexts here. There's the pandemic, there's politics, all that. But is there a connection between the music we grew up with? Because we can admit, I think, Cody, that when we're talking about anger, yes, some of the boomers are angry, but mostly they're just angry that everyone else is angry, that all the young people are angry. I think we can say, we can pinpoint our generations, Gen X and millennials, is there a connection between how angry we are compared to previous generations and the music we grew up with? That's what I want to talk about.
So my mind goes to, I think part of it is just the access we have right now to music. Because if, I don't know, from 1850 to 1950, if you were in the South and you were a black blues musician or someone that sang those songs, there's some anger. And yet that's probably not making its way to North White America or the Midwest or the West Coast. I think that part of it just is that everyone, their mom now has access. Like, I have Apple Music. You just list an artist not named Garth Brooks, and I will be able to play their discography for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying, of course, is true. And this is a little bit, this conversation will always have a little bit of the chicken and the egg.
Yes.
Which comes first? Well, I don't know. And we can't prove it any the other way. I just want to, I want to kind of float around this question and just talk about it. So what I'd like to do is just first, let's put out some of our favorite angry music is. And I have a few things I'd like to talk about. One that pops to my mind immediately is kind of the old way of angry music, at least mainstream angry music. That's the breakup song. And Alanis Morissette with You Oughta Know.
You oughta know.
Now, there had always been breakup music, but Alanis was that You Oughta Know was the first song I remember being like, oh, she's really angry.
Oh, yeah.
And when I found out it was about Dave Cody in Full House, I tripped. I just couldn't. I was like, wait a minute. This is all about Uncle, what's his name?
Uncle Joey.
Uncle Joey?
Joseph Gladstone.
He messed you up. That guy messed you up that bad. Yeah. But phenomenal song. I just love Alanis Morissette too. I think she's genius.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I looked up, like, angry 90s music. But it was weird to me because, like, some of those songs I would not have classified as angry.
Oh, hit me. Yeah. What do you think's not angry?
So, they had Beck's Loser as an anger song, and I'm like,
yeah, disagree.
It's more of like a loner anthem.
Mm-hmm.
Iris, I guess it is, but like the way it's played out, it like the tone doesn't necessarily match the chorus lyrics.
Yeah. Let's make a distinction right now, because I'm glad you said Goo Goo Dolls and Iris. We are, again, biblically speaking, as pastors, there is a difference between anger and lamenting.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference. I would say that Iris by Goo Goo Dolls is a song of lamentation.
Yes.
And there's a big difference between I am lamenting, which is kind of a combination of sadness and almost helplessness to something I can't fix.
Yeah. But then the Barbie movie brought up one of my favorite songs from this period of Push by Matchbox 20.
Which is a breakup song.
Yep. And so, and then another song that I'm like, I guess it's angry, but like when you're mumbling, it doesn't sound so angry. Lithium by Nirvana.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that the music that immediately comes to my mind that I enjoyed, angry music, was gangsta rap. I've mentioned that already. I loved rap anyways. I loved East Coast rap. I loved lyrical rap. But there was something about when the West Coast thing started, Dr. Dre, NWA, Ice Cube, when that started getting popular, there was something about that music it was definitely anger music, but it was empowering, right? And granted, I could not, growing up in Kansas, in any way, even back then I knew that I cannot identify with this in any way, but that didn't stop us from trying, right? You emulated the style. There were plenty of dudes living in Kansas with their hats sideways and trying to emulate the style of all that. Because I think at the end of the day, there's something about music that's angry, that's empowering. And it makes a lot of sense when you talk about rap. And I'll talk about that later, but I don't want to get into it right now.
DMX was my go-to workout jam.
Yeah.
Like I could run through walls listening to DMX.
Right. It's empowering. some of that music is very empowering, and it started with that kind of gangsta rap phase. Death Row Records obviously is a huge part of that, but NWA, Ice Cube, Ice-T, even Ice-T has a heavy metal group called Body Count that is just like listen, there's nothing even comparable to that now. That was just straight up anger music.
Very angry.
But I listen to them. I also listen to Limp Bizkit.
Ew.
I was like, listen, you can say ooh, and I know it's cool to rag on them now.
I was
to make fun of them
on them back then.
Yeah, well, you may have.
I was listening to
but you
Creed.
can't argue with their record sales.
I should.
Like, listen.
I honestly think the reason their sales were so high is because Undertaker used one of their songs as his entrance.
And why? Why would he use that as an entrance song?
Because he was rolling on his motorcycle.
Because it's empowering. Because it's anger music. There's something that they're accessing there. Granted, I will say, like, people like to make fun of Fred Durst. Like, listen, Fred Durst has talent. Stop it. Like, he's not talentless, but we can all agree that Wes Borland, as the guitarist of the band, was probably the backbone. He's an amazing guitarist. And Limp Bizkit had some amazing guitar songs. But the thing I want to point out is that Limp Bizkit has, it's all accessing this like young person anger. Right. And that's why they sold records and they made music to complement that. I mean, one of their songs is literally called Break Stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the anger anthem. And I can't tell you the words because this is a clean show. And I'm a little embarrassed to even say as a pastor that I once listened to this and got into it. Because let me tell you about an experience I had.
Oh,
I had dropped my girls off at dance, and I have about a 20-minute drive there and a 20-minute drive back to get them to dance. And on the way home, I thought, I'm in a car all by myself. I was like, I want to listen to some old music I used to like. I do that from time to time, nostalgia. And I don't know why, but on my shuffle on my phone, Limp Bizkit came up. And I was like, you know what? Let's listen to some Limp Bizkit. And so I turn it on, and I'm listening to it. And I'm bobbing my head and I'm getting into the Mission Impossible song comes on. Bam, 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 bam. But with their style, it hits a little bit harder, And something interesting, music that I used to get my adrenaline going and really get me in a place where it could get me excitable. It felt hollow and empty. And in my pastoral mind, I started thinking about why is that? But really, it mimics anger itself, doesn't it? Anger, on initial feeling of it, is good. It points you to justice. It points you to what's right. But when you hold on to anger just for anger's sake, we're seeing that all around us now. It just gets hollow and empty. There's no point to it anymore. You're just angry to be angry. And we see a lot of people like that now. You just go on social media for a while. And it made sense to me in that moment, oh, okay. Well, here's the problem with anger music. And then I started thinking, did this music condition us to want to be angry for anger's sake, though? Because we got pleasure from it. It gave me pleasure to listen to gangster rap. It gave me pleasure to listen to Limp Bizkit. It gave some people in the 80s pleasure to listen to punk music. They still listen to punk music to this day. It's all about being angry about the man and fighting the system. Now, I'm not saying this makes us bad people, but I'm saying, did it condition us in any way? That's what I want to get into. There are studies, however, if you Google this, there are studies that tell you that angry music's actually good. It's cathartic.
Can be.
This is from the Guardian. A study by the University of Queensland, the Australian Public Research Institution in Brisbane, revealed that rather than proving the hypothesis that extreme music causes anger, and by extreme, they're talking about heavy metal, emo, hardcore, punk, screamo, and various other subgenres. Okay?
There was some good emo bands back in the day.
Yeah. Instead of the hypothesis that extreme music causes anger or violence, such was the hypothesis of Tipper Gore, You remember Tipper?
I do.
Al Gore's wife, she went on a crusade when Al was a senator to get gangsta rap kind of get it out. They wanted to ban it.
Get married with children off the air. I'm looking at you, Tipper.
That's sort of amazing to think about because he was a Democrat. He was a liberal. Now that's completely the realm of the conservative Republican.
Very much so.
And it's interesting to think about that was a Democrat back then. But instead, the theory that extreme music matches and helps to process anger was supported instead by this study. Honor student Leah Sharman and Dr. Genevieve Dingle studied 39 regular listeners of extreme music between the ages of 18 and 34. And it was similar to yoga in a way. They found the music regulated sadness, enhanced positive emotions. And when experiencing anger, extreme music fans like to listen to music that could match their anger. The music helped them explore the full gamut of emotion they felt, but also left them feeling more active and inspired, the study says. Results showed level of hostility, irritability, and stress decreased after music was introduced, and the most significant change reported was the level of inspiration they felt. So here we have a study that says, actually, it has good benefits.
I will point out that was a quite small sample size.
Yeah. Well, but there's multiple of them out there. That's the thing that you'll find. So in studying for this pod, Cody, I found many studies that said either the opposite things, right? There were several studies that say that, hey, it's actually kind of cathartic. But I also found studies like this. So this is researchers from Iowa State University and the Texas Department of Human Services found that the aggressive music lyrics increase aggressive thoughts and feelings, which might perpetuate aggressive behavior and have long-term effects. Hold on to long-term effects, such as influencing listeners' perceptions of society and contributing to the development of aggressive personalities. Now, let's go back to gangsta rap for a second, because gangsta rap is very interesting to me in this way. Anger over injustice is a virtue, right? It's a virtue. But as soon as the anger just becomes anger for anger's sake, it's not a virtue anymore. It's far less virtuous. It becomes empty. Gangsta rap makes all the sense in the world coming from a group that faced so much oppression, coming from ancestors of the group that were enslaved. Like, it makes all the sense in the world and might be cathartic for that group.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the kids who didn't have that to draw on, that listened to it? How were they processing the anger? Because I can actually make an argument that gangsta rap is actually quite cathartic for the group that it came from. And it makes sense to me why they would view the world that way. And it makes sense to me that they would create music that's angry but empowering in a setting where they felt like they didn't have power. Like, and that matches maybe a lot of the way minorities feel still today, is that they have less power and they feel oppressed, right? By the culture, by the way the society is set up. And so it makes sense to me that music could come from them. And the empowering part of that might be an okay thing. But when we look at studies like this, that the long-term effects, what is the long-term effect of holding on to anger? It's not good.
Nope.
And listen, there have been African-Americans in leadership roles who have decried this very thing in that music. Like, this isn't just some dumb white guy talking on a microphone, although I am a dumb white guy talking on the microphone. This idea has been out there for a long time from all areas of our culture. And it's a question that I think it's worth talking about. So I can, on one hand, say gangster rap had good qualities for some things, but in the long run, since gangster rap largely gains in popularity in the early 90s for our generations. And now we live in a world where we're just angry all the time. Does that have an effect? And I'm not throwing the bus at gangster rap, heavy metal, all of it. What do we think? Because here's the thing. There's another study. The BBC says, this is from an article in the BBC. Liar Shamir at Lawrence Technical University gathered the lyrics of 6,150 Billboard Hot 100 singles from 1951 to 2016. He fed them to an algorithm. The software had been trained to identify linguistic markers of different emotional states and personality traits, including sadness, fear, disgust, joy, and extroversion. And although a computer would clearly miss some of those nuances of complex lyrics, its assessments do tend to agree with human judgment. It correctly identified, for instance, that the dominant emotion in Bonnie Tyler's hit Total Eclipse of the Heart was sadness. For real, Bonnie, why'd you hit us so hard? My mom loved that song.
Who doesn't love that song?
The Village People's YMCA, meanwhile, scored for Joy, which, yeah, it's a joyful song.
I guess.
And for people, all people that love to hang out at the YMCA. Queen's We Will Rock You was high on the extroversion scale, which sounds about right. Shamir then averaged the scores for each year and examined how they changed over time. The results are striking. Expressions of anger and disgust have roughly doubled over those 65 years. For instance, while fear increased by more than 50%, remarkably, today's songs are even more aggressive and fearful than in the heyday of punk. One probable reason for this is the growing influence of rap music, which, like punk, has reflected social unrest and feelings of disenfranchisement. We just talked about that. Sadness, meanwhile, remained stable into the 80s, then steadily increased into the 2010s, while joy, confidence, and openness have all steadily declined. Cody, thoughts?
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of areas that my mind goes to.
Okay.
Especially after you rattle off all those.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to get through it.
But, okay, so you said at some point in one of the studies about like 18 to 34-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
You know what group that is?
Now?
Well, no. I mean, just what group that is. No matter what generation you're in, it's a group that's trying to form and finalize who they are, their identity.
Oh, yeah. Context. Good point.
Yes.
Good point. That's a time of life where you're doing that. Right. Good point.
And so, like, when you're growing up before the age 18, you say the correct things, you do the correct things, you're under your parents' guidance, and it might not have always been fun. And you may have wanted to shout out in rage. And so, yeah, when you make music that targets that age group, hey, you're going to get some angry individuals. Mm-hmm. But if that becomes who your identity is, you get stuck dwelling there versus advancing through it. So I'm going to say this. Honestly, all generations have people that just get stuck there. Mm-hmm. If you look at, let's go back to the late 80s, early 90s. There's a movie called Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men. And so, yeah, there's people that just love to complain and be angry about everything and anything because they get stuck there. That's their identity. Now, I don't know if we as a culture have necessarily gotten more angry. I think part of the thing that we do have to remember is go back to Andy Griffith's show. You're not portraying anger on that show.
No.
And if you talk to people that were alive then, there were angry people then. And that wasn't how all Americans were living. Matter of fact, that's like a dream scenario, living in a little town where the only thing that is ever wrong is there's a guy that throws rocks and the drunk always lets himself in jail. I mean, our definition of taboo has changed drastically.
Oh, yeah.
The church's influence has changed drastically, where if DJ was on this show right now, he'd be talking about the church needs to be hope dealers. And you know what? If the church doesn't have an influence on society, and the church looks an awful lot like society anyway, that we're not hope dealing, then
Yep. Let's just take a side road there for 1 second and say absolutely agree. The church takes responsibility here. At the point where the church decided that it was more important to take part in politics and this anger, like, listen, much of the anger in our culture and society today comes from church folks. And listen, I don't know how many times you have to read Jonah to figure out that ain't it.
no.
I do not understand it. Coming again, I know my angle on it's a little different because I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't get all that church culture, but it looks really weird to me when Christians are expressing anger about politics. It just looks like the strangest, oddest thing ever. And the whole thing around Trump, I'm just going to say it. I don't care if it makes people mad. That is super weird to me. January 6th, protests. Like, listen, I don't understand. I don't understand the anger coming from that group, because that seems to be the one group where you had a mandate where, hey, like, anger doesn't look good on you.
Yeah.
So
settle it before the sun goes down and move on.
as a pastor, maybe it makes sense for us to be hardest on our own.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say the church definitely bears responsibility in whatever this is that's happening.
So I also do think that, again, I brought it up towards the beginning of our discussion, that our access to it might make it seem more prevalent. But also, the thing is, anyone and their mom can make music these days. Like, you don't have to go to a professional studio. You just have to have a song, like, go on TikTok or YouTube and be trending, just catch the right person's ear, and then boom, you now have a hit song. And I do think younger people are listening in droves and masses. But I mean, in 1950, it would have been hard to just sit down and pick whatever song you wanted to listen to.
True.
You were stuck with what's on the radio, or if your family was rich enough, you had the record player. I mean, things have shifted so much that I don't know if we're actually any angrier. I think we're more open about it. And also, anger may have taken on a different meaning for generations post Vietnam. That you have the hippies that are like, hey, we're protesting this unjust war. Bring our boys back home. We shouldn't be there. Quit making me go overseas. And ever since then, we have this nostalgic view of anarchy, of protesting, and there's definitely things to protest. There's definitely things to be upset about. But like, every cause now has this feel of, well, I'm going to stand up against those that eat Lay's potato chips.
Yeah. Now, I think you're right. I think our view of it can lead us to maybe some overblown conclusions. I will say, like, you bring up the hippies, for instance, which famously make love, not war. Definitely a more peaceful brand of protesting for sure back in that time. But there were riots back then too.
Oh, yeah.
Like humans are going to behave badly. We can count on our brokenness to show up, to rear its head.
And there might be humans behaving badly for a just cause and humans that join in just because they want to be a part of the chaos.
Yeah. And now we just have recording devices on all of us that are going to catch those moments a lot better. So like, for instance, I took my son to a Sporting Kansas City game on Monday night. Sporting KC's a soccer team, MLS team. They were playing Chivas Guadalajara. They were playing a Mexican professional team. And so that it resulted in kind of a different crowd. Like there was a lot of Mexican folks there to see their team, which they probably, most of them are probably American citizens and have lived there for their whole lives, but they don't get a chance to see their team. So it was kind of a cool atmosphere.
Yeah.
But getting that many people together in one place with alcohol, it resulted in my son seeing like his first fight. It was a bunch of dudes, of course, and they were inebriated, of course. And it just happens. Now, does that mean the Sporting Kansas City games are not a great environment for kids? No, I wouldn't say that at all. I've never seen anything close to like that. But it just happens sometimes when you have those things in the same environment. Our brokenness with alcohol, with dudes. Because it's largely dudes, if we're being honest.
It is. So I do think that connection with like some of that anger can be cathartic, especially when it's portrayed through music. But again, if that's like you don't want to move past it, it's the same thing as listening to sad, depressing songs. There's times that I really want to listen to Sea Change, which is Beck's album that he wrote after a breakup. And it's just sad. Oh, just sad. If you want to be depressed for a day, listen to that album. He won a Grammy for it, by the way. But like if you just listen to that till Kingdom Come, oh yeah, you're going to be depressed. You can't dwell in just one emotion. It's not good to be constantly listening to Walking on Sunshine.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Life has its ups and its downs. I did see a study, though, since we're talking about studies, that people that laugh or pretend to laugh, our body can't distinguish. And so it releases those happy endorphins. So if you feel like you're stuck in anger or stuck in a sad, depressed season, fake laugh for a little bit. You'll release some happier endorphins.
Yeah. If you also want to be depressed, you can listen to Mike and the Mechanics, big song. Do you remember that song? Oh, man, my mom loved this song. Gosh, what was the name of it? Mike and the Mechanics. Super group, according to Google. Were they, though? The Living Years, which came out in 1988, is the most depressing song I have ever heard. It's the most depressing thing ever. Let me see if I can get you some of the lyrics here. All right. Every generation blames the one before, and all of their frustrations come beating on your door. I know that I'm a prisoner to all my father held so dear. I know that I'm a hostage to all his hopes and fears. I just wish I could have told him in the living years. Oh my gosh, I can't even read the first verse and chorus without being like, this is super sad. Crumpled bits of paper filled with imperfect thought, stilted conversations. I'm afraid that's all we've got. You say this song was ahead of its time.
Oh yeah.
You say you just don't see it. He says it's perfect sense. You just can't get agreement in this present tense. We all talk a different language, talking in defense. I'm just going to say it. Mike and the Mechanics, they were prophets.
No one saw it coming back then.
Say it loud, say it clear. You can listen as well as you hear. It's too late when we die to admit we don't see eye to eye. There you go. Yeah, that song was heavy, bro. Heavy, bro. There was also, do you remember a band called Blessed Union of Souls? It was my go-to sad music. Although, if I'm talking, like their big songs were I Believe, Love is the Answer. I Believe, that song was a big song. That was like their big song. The lyrics would tell you that that's not a sad song, but their music just sounded sad. Another song was Let Me Be the One, which was kind of like unrequited love song. Those were big for me. So the feelings of like, I've got a crush, I love someone and they don't know it. That was that was my go-to sad music.
It's legit.
I liked sad music as well as angry music.
So I do think that, like, right now, maybe there's more hits that have anger, like super hits, I guess. But there's also some really poppy, fun songs.
Yeah.
There's some really sad ones. And, so I looked up a study today just because I knew the topic. Did you know one study says that your swearing, cursing, if you will, actually relieves built up tension and stress and is better for your health, is what this study says. Now, I do not recommend people to do this, but the thing is, if you're a person that can say something and move on, great. But not all of us are that person. And that's why I always come back to the sample size, because, yeah, maybe 60% of the population wouldn't have an issue with it. Maybe 20% might have somewhat, but there's some that they just are the grumpy old man without even being old. They're just going to keep on keeping on in the anger. Ice Cube sounds a lot different today talking about his life than he did back in 1990.
Yeah, true.
Thing is, people grow up, people mature. Now, if you get stuck, that's where it becomes an issue. And going back to Jonah, because you brought it up, does it do you any good to dwell in your anger? No, it doesn't. Knock it off.
Okay, well, and that leads us into the last thing I wanted to talk about. It's personal music choices for our personal lives. Is it wrong to listen to angry music? No. No, it's not.
Nope.
We've already talked about that anger, the mimicking of the actual emotion and the feeling of anger by this music, anger is meant to drive us to justice. That's good. But there is the side of it of just like when we hold on to anger too long, it becomes hollow and empty. Anger over injustice is a virtue, but as soon as it becomes anger just for anger's sake, it's far less virtuous. And so, just as a suggestion, we should be careful of the music we're listening to. Or not careful, maybe that's not the right word.
Mindful.
Thoughtful. Yeah, exactly. Mindful. Don't listen to punk rock 24/7. Like, if you have a problem with anger, it's interesting what you said about cursing, that it actually releases some pressure. Then the dudes that work at Pizza Hut are like the most mentally healthy people in our town, I think, because they do all the cursing. But yeah, I mean, if angry music is cathartic for you, then listen to angry music occasionally.
Oh, yeah. So there's a scene in the movie The Accountant where Ben Affleck's character is furious. And he has the same routine every night, but he finally connects with the song that's playing during his normal routine. And it's like this loud screaming, loud music that's just full of anger. And like, he's angry, and like he has this stick that he rolls over his legs. Well, instead of rolling it, he's like hitting his legs, and like he gets all super angry, but then like it's gone. And the other times he does it, he's listening to the music, it doesn't have an effect on him, and he's just gently rolling the stick over his leg. But yeah, sometimes you do need to release that tension. Don't release it on people, because that's not nice. Be thoughtful and mindful of how you have your cathartic experiences.
We want to hear from you. What's the angry music y'all listen to? How does it
Linkin
make you
Park.
I forgot about them. Metallica would have been one that I should have mentioned as well. I love Metallica.
I have despised Metallica for years. So.
Wow. What's wrong with you? Why do you despise
Napster?
Oh, you're angry with them. Well, yeah, like listen, my opinion over them has changed over the years. But I used to love Metallica. But yeah, them kind of selling out how they got big and then being all corporate about it's a little annoying. But granted, we were all getting music for free, so we couldn't exactly stand on the high ground, moral high ground.
I was just about to get music for free. Computers had finally come to Southeast Kansas, baby.
All right. We're not done yet. We got to go to our man, Scotty, our comic geek, Scotty, because it's time to introduce another comics conclave, another graphic novel for us to read together. So, Cody, you know what that means?
Geek phone time.
To the geek phone. All right. Here we are. We're on the geek phone. Do you feel different, Cody?
I do feel different. It's been a while.
It has been a while, but we're here to talk to our guy, our comic geek, Scotty. Scotty, what's up?
Not much. How are you guys tonight?
Oh, we're doing pretty good. Pretty good. Just we had a serious discussion tonight.
It was weird.
We talked about anger and music and stuff. So yeah, we've done so many reviews lately because it's summer. There's
Didn't even bring up Rob Zombie.
We didn't talk about Rob Zombie. That's true.
One of the greats. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, that's anger music.
At times.
Yeah. But we're done with that conversation. We're here to talk to Scotty because we do this thing called Comics Conclave with Scotty, and Scotty directs us to a different graphic novel that we can read together, and he'll ask questions on the Pop Culture Pastor community group, which if you haven't joined it, you should.
Please
if you follow us. You'll if you just follow the page, you won't get all the posts in your feed. So if you find the Pop Culture Pastor community group and join the group, you'll make sure that you see more of the posts. Plus, you'll interact with Geeks of the Round Table and other listeners.
Comics Conclave, dare I say, is basically Oprah's Book of the Month Club, but on steroids.
Yeah. It's our version of the Book of the Month Club, and we don't read real books. We read graphic novels and comic books.
Occasionally I'll read a real book.
No, Cody, we don't read real books ever. Okay, Scotty. Now, the last thing we read was Sandman.
We're gonna go a little lighter this go around.
Man, I'm glad for that.
Sandman was so good, though.
It was good. Tell us what we're reading, Scotty.
Okay, so I'm gonna paint a little bit of a picture here.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, like I said, a little lighter, a little more fun. So this book is kind of that a man who kind of really set back and was great at one thing and come to another. So we're gonna go back a little bit and this young man had been a illustrator, was working for Cartoon Network, loving his job, finally, and had a brother who kept trying to get him into making music. Finally, after one bad day, he was on the train on his way to work and watched the towers fall on September 11th.
Oh, wow.
Went back home, told his brother that, okay, let's do this band thing. They put out 3 albums, very successful albums. The band is My Chemical Romance. The young man, Gerard Way. Yes. Gerard Way decided that after that 3rd album, he wanted to get back to his roots and do comics. That was the thing that he went to school for. That's what he wanted to do. That, he wanted to do his own thing and not be doing, somebody else's work like he was doing at Cartoon Network. So he went to Dark Horse and to pitch this title, which is Umbrella Academy.
Wait, a dude from My Chemical Romance wrote Umbrella Academy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
That's why I said there was some great emo bands back in the day.
Yes.
In our previous discussion.
So he went into Scott Ollie, and Scott Ollie goes, I stopped at one point taking pitches from movie stars and rock stars, because what happens is generally they become vanity projects. The first issue sells, and then after that, the book doesn't sell because they're
trash.
Not a project. Exactly. So he goes, I kind of sat through and listened to him, and he left, and he goes, I felt like, again, I had, kind of just humored this young man, and he went on his way. He goes, he left me all his pitch notes. He goes, I finally decided to look at it. He goes, the moment I looked at it, I couldn't put it down. And from that moment on, he goes, he was the man who changed my mind on taking pitches from rock stars and movie stars again, because he goes, I was blown away each page I went through of this. He had this whole planned out miniseries, and then also all the subsequent graphic novels planned out.
Very cool. So the title is The Umbrella Academy.
Umbrella Academy, Volume 1, Apocalypse Suite.
Okay.
Is the first one.
Now give me 30 seconds, because I know that people are probably, a lot of people are familiar, especially our listeners that are geek people. They're probably familiar with the Netflix series if they've seen it. Tell me the difference in 30 seconds between the comics and the Netflix series.
The biggest difference is the amount of children. So in the comic book, it is 47 children, all born to 43 different women.
Whoa.
Third day, and none of these women show signs of pregnancy at the start of the day.
Wow.
And just like in the Netflix series, swoops in this mysterious billionaire who wants to buy these children and start an academy. And thus he gets 7 of them and starts the Umbrella Academy.
Okay. All right. Well, Scotty, I'm excited because I've wanted to read these for a long time, and I just, because I'm old and I haven't found the time to do it. So yeah, we're reading. Say the title again.
It is Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite.
Okay. All right.
And I actually own this one.
You own it, so I can borrow it from you.
You can.
Sweet. I was just thinking, I bet I'm gonna have to find a physical copy of this. This isn't gonna be on Marvel.
Nope, it will not.
This is a nice Dark Horse book. So
all right. So there you have it. That's the Comics Conclave title. As usual, Scotty will be posting questions and subjects for us to have conversations, I'm assuming, along the way.
Oh,
and he'll give us about a month for us to all get through it, and then he'll come back on. We'll have we'll talk about it a little bit longer. This is just to introduce it, but when he comes back, we'll do at least 15 minutes and talk about Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite. Anything else?
That's it.
Awesome. All right.
Go read it, guys.
Go get it. Go find the physical copy at the library or on Amazon, and let's start reading it together. Scotty, thanks for stopping in to give us our next title.
Anytime, guys.
As usual, if you aren't subscribed to the podcast, you should probably do that. Subscribe wherever you listen. We're on Apple and Google and Spotify. Also, you should follow the Facebook page or the Twitter page. Join the group on Facebook, all of that. Just follow all of them. Share our posts. Tell people why you love our podcast. That helps too. And also this weekend, this drops on Friday, Saturday and Sunday of this podcast dropping, we will be in Gardner, Kansas.
That's a place.
That is a place. It's basically a suburb of Kansas City. We'll be real close to Kansas City for the Fountain City Comic Convention. Fountain City Con. You excited, Cody?
I am.
Yeah. So if you're going to be out that way this Saturday and Sunday, come see us out at Fountain City Con. We'd love to see you. That's what we do. We like going to comic conventions and hanging with our listeners.
Yes.
And finding new listeners, finding new friends. We're all about growing community and making new friends. Scotty, we going to see you?
Unfortunately not. I'm working this weekend.
All right. Scotty lives like 3 hours away, so I kind of knew the answer to that already.
Yeah.
All right, man. We'll see you. Scotty, we'll see you, and we'll see all you listeners down the road. Thanks for listening.
Pop Culture Pastor.